So if the title of the episode wasn't obvious enough, the speech at the end with Ainz gave it away. Death flags. Death flags everywhere. Like, all of the characters that were introduced throughout this episode pretty much had a giant death flag thrown over their head. And yeah, I mean, when you see how the workers were introduced, what Ainz said at the end, it makes a lot of sense. But hold that thought for right now. Let's talk about what is going on within this episode. So to kind of clarify, it's very apparent from the way this episode was, hinting at certain details, the ruins, and all that, the Empire has discovered Nazarick. That's what you can get from this episode, because ruins appear out of nowhere. We know of the Great Tomb of Nazarick and all that. It's deep down underground. Ainz has been trying to keep it hidden, but apparently, from what we can see here, is that someone has managed to find it, and now, they want to explore it, get riches, and all that. So the final segment of the episode, when Ainz is talking to the group of workers, he's like, so I know adventurers, when they're tasked a job, they have no choice but to do it. That's what Ainz is basically saying. They have no choice. Like, if they're given a task, they have to do it. There's just no way they can back out of it, unless they just kind of want to get kicked out and not be an adventurer anymore. And so, since you all are workers, and technically you have freedom, you can do whatever you want, I ask you, what is the reason to why you want to go to these ruins? And all of them basically said they wanted money. They wanted greed. They were greedy and they wanted stuff. And when Ainz replied with, I guess my question was pointless or worthless, he's basically saying, I guess, there's no point in me feeling bad or whatever, because obviously, these individuals, they want to come into the man's home and steal his crap. Like, okay, example, let's say you were playing a game for a long time, you and a group of friends, you spent a lot of time, creating something. Like, you built this giant fortress, you had all this treasure, this wealth, and all that. You spent hundreds upon hundreds of hours to build. That's the equivalent of what Ainz has done with his friends. With the Supreme Beings and all that, he created Nazarick, all the NPCs, he had a lot of fun in, this, world. And eventually, everybody gave up and they left their own way, but Ainz still has a lot of memories into what his, friends, what they created. And so when you have these bunch of randoms just come out of nowhere like, hey, we want to raid this and all that, steal everything, obviously, you're going to get a little bit upset. You're going to be a little bit angry. So that final segment from Ainz, when he's like, what a worthless question, basically, he's like, okay, so I guess I don't need to feel bad. I mean, obviously, you guys are not being forced to do this. You're coming at your own free will, and you're just all freaking greedy. You want to steal my crap. So, it's kind of like this is the exact opposite of what happened in the last episode. If you remember Nemu and all that with the little girl, when she was, looking around, the Great Tomb of Nazarick, we had it to where Ainz instantly warmed up to her, loved her, and he was just showing her around, having a lot of fun, because, someone was really passionate and loved what his friends made, the time they spent to make Nazarick, and so Ainz was really happy, he was showing her around, and in that moment, it shows that Ainz was just very happy to share, with others that actually appreciated what his friends made. She wasn't trying to steal anything, she was just amazed. While you have it on this episode, we have the exact opposite. We have people that obviously just rubbed Ainz the wrong way. Like, this man is, like, trying to give him a chance, but then automatically they're like, we just want to steal stuff. That's how you make a man very upset. So we're introduced to a new cast of characters that are going to be very relevant for this arc of Overlord. And usually when a new arc begins for Overlord, we have new cast of characters introduced, and usually the POV shifts. I mean, we've seen this throughout the previous arcs of Overlord ever since Season 1. We've had the POV shift. I've talked about this in my Season 2 reviews, and then also in my Season 3 reviews. And this is going to be something that's going to continuously happen throughout the journey of Overlord, even up to the latest volume of the light novel. So this is something that's just not going to go away. But these new characters are going to be the main focus or POV for this arc that want to kind of make this their last job. They don't want it to, but they're pretty much being forced into the position to make this their last job. Now, obviously, there's some ominous little things overhead because of this. I mean, with the whole stuff with Ainz, going to Nazarick, and all of that. But they want to make this their last job because, I mean, number one, one of their big spellcasters is going to be leaving to start up her own life, take care of her sisters, and just move on and all that away from her parents are obviously too stubborn to give up old traditions, for instance, because they used to be nobles. They think that they can continuously spend money without any repercussions, but obviously that's not working anymore. And, you know, the daughter that's obviously having to support the family and support everyone, she's decided to just get up and leave with her sisters to support them and make sure they're healthy and fine. So, I mean, obviously she wants to have a good life, and all the others that are part of her group realize that, like, okay, she's in debt, she wants to start her own life, she wants to leave, we're not going to hold that back or hold her back from doing that. You know, this is probably going to be our final time together. So that's pretty much what the start of this group's character introduction is, showcasing that they want this to be one of their final missions for they can, you know, just appreciate the life afterwards. For instance, just like, you know, have a happy family or whatever they need to do. And so we get some insight to the individuals, like we get the insight to, you know, the girl, you know, Archie and all that, and with her sisters, her family situation. Then we get a situation with one of the leaders of the squad that obviously has a romantic relationship with the elf, or half-elf to be exact. And so, I mean, we have these character introductions showcasing that they're closely knitted as a group. They're kind of like a typical, like, adventurer group, honestly, except they have the worker title. Let's talk about the Fluter scene, or Fluter, however you pronounce his name. I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering his name. Who I'm talking about is the Merlin knockoff, the dude that, you know, is a wizard, the one that was, you know, messing with the undead at the beginning of the episode. Well, he is an incredibly important character. He was actually kind of slightly already hinted at the end of Season 2, and we get to see him finally in this episode and seeing what kind of skills he has, and apparently he's able to use 6th-tier magic. Now, obviously, this is nowhere compared to what Ainz is capable of. The man is capable of, like, the 10th-tier magic, and also, as we know, Ainz is a cheater. He has, you know, pay-to-win items. So, I mean, Fluter or whatever, you know, even though he has 6th-tier magic, which is impressive for what we have seen throughout the series thus far, he's still nowhere near Ainz or the other NPCs of Nazarick. But, still, it's pretty impressive where his level of power is at. Apparently, he's able to use 6th-tier magic. He's able to use magic that could potentially turn undead to make it work for him. Obviously, he couldn't get the Death Knight to turn over and work for him in this episode, and he still showcases that he has a lot of skill. Now, I do want to, you know, be very, you know, direct with all of you. He is not a necromancer, okay? I know many might get that impression that, you know, Fluter could be a necromancer because he was trying to turn the Death Knight over to his will, and then you had a bunch of skeletons that were, you know, working the fields or whatever. He is not a necromancer. In fact, he's more along the lines of like a wizard than anything else. Just think of Merlin, you know, what you know of Merlin and mythology and stuff. That's pretty much what Flutter is, or Fluter or whatever. That's, you know, that's who he mainly represents. Even by the character design, you can see that that's kind of what the writer was going with, like a Merlin-type looking character. Now, speaking of other characters, we also have the Prince introduced in this episode as well. Now, I know what he looks like, or who he looks like. I talked about this even at the end of my Season 2, you know, reviews. I said that, yes, he looks like Gilgamesh, and holy crap, yeah, just seeing him again, once again, in anime form, he really does look like Gilgamesh. I mean, honestly, when I was watching this episode, I expected the man to say, like, mongrels or something while I was watching, like, mongrels, filthy mongrels. I was just expecting that throughout the entire time of watching this. I was just waiting for him to say a line like that. It didn't happen, but even then, though, just like, yes, the dude does obviously look like Gilgamesh, and he's a pretty cool and interesting character. I want to be completely honest with you, his entire character wasn't introduced in this episode. There's a lot more to his character, and I do believe that that will get a major spotlight in the upcoming episodes compared to this one. It was just mainly kind of, you know, introducing him, letting us kind of see who he is or how he looks for the most part. I actually believe that scene was anime original. I could be wrong there. You could correct me, light novel readers that have recently read this volume or reread this volume. Let's talk about the workers situation, what they are and how they differ from adventurers. Now, as I briefly already stated at the beginning of this video, workers, they have a little bit more freedom because they're not necessarily, you know, forced to do jobs like how adventurers are. Like, for instance, they're given a job. Like, adventurers are given a job, they have to do it. They have to do it regardless if they want to or not, unless they don't want to be an adventurer anymore. While workers, they're individuals that obviously have freedom. They're not attached to the adventurer guild, so they can pretty much do whatever they want. Take any mission they want regardless of, you know, the skill gap. So, like, if they wanted to take a high-level mission, they can, regardless of how low-level they are. That's pretty much what a worker can necessarily do. But also, they don't have the protection of the the Adventurers Guild. And so these workers, obviously, they're trying to just get by. Most of the workers are actually just dropout adventurers, or sometimes some of the workers are individuals that just did not like the politics that came with being an adventurer. Let's talk about the meeting that, you know, Ainz had with Fluter and all that. So there was obviously an apparent meeting between the two. We didn't actually get to see them talk with each other within this episode, but we do know that a meeting went down. And I believe the events of this scene is actually in the proper order. What I mean by that is, in the light novel, this stuff was completely, you know, not in, like, proper order. It was all out of order, and you had to kind of figure out what was going on, fill in the blanks until the final part of, you know, the light novel happened. And so, I feel like the anime, you know, the way Madhouse is handling this, they're actually restructuring it to actually fit in a proper timeline to where it doesn't confuse anime onlys, which honestly I appreciate. I think that's a lot better. I could be wrong there, but I believe they are restructuring the order of events. Within this episode, we do know that there is a plan going on. Demi has some form of plan to finally create a country. That's what he even states to Ainz. Ainz says he can't really go against him because, you know, Demi always has really good plans. He really doesn't have any way to really counter his argument and, you know, offer a better plan. So he's going along with it. We don't necessarily know what the plan is, but if we could assume anything, it definitely has something to do with this group of adventurers or workers that were introduced throughout this episode. So that's pretty much about it when it comes to this week's episode of Overlord. I might have missed a few details, but I believe overall everything else is pretty easy to understand. Let me know your thoughts if you enjoyed this week's episode of Overlord or if you hated it. Be honest, and if you enjoy my content, you know, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like, and if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.